All right, hello and welcome to the next Nix Hour. So we have someone else joining here. If you have a question, feel free to say so in the chat or by voice as well, and feel free to interrupt at any time. Just want to mention as well that if you want to ask a question, please join the meeting. The YouTube chat isn't enabled because it would be a bit of duplicate. But yeah, so today we haven't had any question asked beforehand here, or no question that I could answer very easily. So I think it might be worth going through the Nix Hour issue tracker here, see if there's a good one, and otherwise we might also take a look at some kind of general overviews and things happening in the Nix ecosystem. So maybe utilizing this would actually be a good one. I feel like we could kind of touch on two things here. Yeah. So yeah, debugging things in Nix. So that's a bit of a. We could even maybe check out older Nix versions. So let's just try something out here. So Nix code is particularly hard to debug. Let me go into Nix Hour here. It's our 40. And let's write something simple. Let's just say we have a mistake in here, and say we have a result, and the result is something like 1 plus 10 in a string. Okay, result. Let's see what kind of error we get from this. We're gonna nix-instantiate eval. Just this. All right, cannot add a string to an integer. Okay, that's actually a good error in this case. But let's see what happens if we, for example, nest this in a function. So let's create a function. Function just calls x plus 10, and now we can do f. We could say prefix. That should work. All right. But if we say number, that shouldn't work. Oh, and actually, this is it's not a terrible error, but okay. So we have these stack traces, but what happens if we have something kind of more intricate? So let's use the module system as a good example. So let's say we import nixpkgs.lib. We want to get the module system. Let's do a lib.eval modules for that. That's the function that allows you to evaluate modules. And so we're going to say, let me do this. So modules, list of modules, and this is kind of the easiest kind of scaffolding you can use to evaluate modules. So we just have something like this. Now we say we have an option. Let's say this is foo. We need lib and scope here. Let's add this here. By the way, note here, we do also have lib in scope from outside here. So we don't actually need to add lib to the arguments here. But if we were to move this module into like a separate file, this would break then, because the lib comes from outside of it. So I like to always refer to lib in the modules themselves. So we declare an option. Let's always assign a type for the options. If you don't know which type to use, you can use raw. Raw is a type that doesn't do any processing. So if you were to like say assign packages, the entire package set to the option, it wouldn't like recurse into all the packages and try to evaluate them and do stuff with them. In turn, there's also anything. Let's do anything here. That's useful if you do want to recurse into the values, but you don't really know which values it is. And this will take care of things like makeif and stuff like that. Maybe just a quick demonstration, and we have that ready to go here as well. So let's say, so type is anything, and now say we have bar equals 10. Let's say we have some list is 1, 2, 3. All right, and let's also say baz equals a lib.makeDefault. So let's make this a baz. Okay. Now in another module, we can do this using imports as one way. So let's say, right, well, actually, let's not use imports here. We have the module list up here, so we can put it right down here. And so in another module, let's say foo.baz equals bar. All right, now evaluate this, config.foo, let's also do strict. Now we can see foo.baz is bar. So the make default got overridden here. Now let's compare this to types.raw, which doesn't do any kind of recursing and processing of these make defaults here. What happens? We get an error. And actually, yeah, this brings us back to the error traces, but let's just look at the error for now from the module system. Right, so it's defined multiple times, but it's expected to be unique. The error could be a bit better, but yeah, it essentially says, right, we have these two definitions, and one of them looks like this, and that is of type override, so that this is what make default does. Yeah?
It says below there that it says use lib make force or make default, but we're already doing that.
That is a very good point. This error message is actually, yeah, kind of bad. This should be improved. Yes. But yeah, so anything does work with that. But yeah, let's get back to the error traces. So nix-instantiate eval strict this file -a config.foo. All right, now we can see the error trace up here. Oh, and actually it's not a long trace. Let's try to get, well, we can see it here. Oh, actually no. So this is a kind of recent thing which still confuses me to this day. This is a trace, but it's only the start of the trace or the end of the trace. I think the start of the trace. You need to pass show trace to get the full one. And now we can see a bit more. It's still not a lot actually in this case. But yeah, so a bit unfortunate. These traces often aren't super useful. Let's try to get something. Yeah, we should get some better example here actually. So let's copy a configuration.nix and then evaluate that. So we have a, well, let's say old one here, but this works. So very simple configuration, and let's do nix instantiate of NixOS and then arg configuration. Actually, this should work. All right, a system. All right, NixOS is fairly slow to evaluate, but this is fine. Okay, what kind of error could we introduce? Let's make it in here, maybe. Let's do like just a number here, maybe. Or yeah, a floating point number. Let's see what happens. Okay, we do get a trace. Oh, actually, this is the module system is a bit too good with the error messages because it doesn't allow us to have a hard to debug error. So let's introduce one ourselves here and say like builtins.gen address, or is gen address one? I think gen address, yeah. Actually no, gen address doesn't exist, gen list exists. So let's say like, yeah, we just call it built-in and see what happens. Oh, that still does work. It detects it as a function. Right, so we need to actually call the function. It takes 2 arguments. Let's just provide 2. We don't use the function correctly here, but yeah, finally we can get a kind of harder error that the module system isn't expecting. All right. Oh, now I need to redo this. I should copy this from here. All right, and go in a separate terminal. All right, Nix Hour 40. Okay, now let's look at the trace and just kind of see if we can. Yeah, this is a longer trace. So usually it will look like this, and honestly, to a degree, these always having these source locations is very distracting in here because we need to scroll up all the way and to kind of get the overview, and this is actually really long. I didn't expect it to be that long. But yeah, this kind of goes through all the Nix code to to get to that point. But you can see here it's a lot of internal functions. So like address sets, that's in Nix packages. That's likely not where the error occurs. Oh, and this uses channels here. Why does it use channels? I thought I removed these. Well, anyways. So we go into modules here. So that's where the module system is evaluated. We go into some NixOS modules, okay. And our own file is that also here. That's really hard to know. Can't immediately see it. But so let's I kind of want to highlight a difference compared to previous Nix versions. And so let's jump back in time and go. So let me get a Nix packages. Why does this still use channels? But we can use older Nix versions. So let's see what versions are available in this one. So we have 2.3, I think. Yeah, that's a fairly old one. I think 2.3 is the oldest one supported by Nix packages still. If I go into Nix packages here and cat the lib.minver, yeah, this shows the minimum version that Nix packages still supports. And so, okay, we built this version, should be in result. And so now we can, instead of nix-instantiate, we can just do result bin nix-instantiate. Of course, older versions don't have that, but yeah, so we can see this now, which I'm actually not sure how much better this is, but if we scroll out a bit, we can kind of get a much nicer overview, in my opinion. And yeah, we can actually, can see the, well, we can see the functions. We can see these traces here while evaluating the attribute warnings. Actually, no, this is not the one. The option warnings, yeah, this one I was searching for. So these are generally the most useful ones. And in the trace nowadays, this is a bit harder to see, but they should also be there. So, oh, and actually, yeah, we can see this one here. This is nice. So maybe just like, let's try to add a bit to this trace. So let's say in our configuration.nix, we are going to add a builtins.addErrorContext. This is built-in where you can add custom messages here. I'm just gonna say like long A, just to make sure we can see it. Should be fairly obvious in the output if it's there. No, I don't want this. Should trace? Yeah, we can see it here. So this appears at the very end here, but oftentimes these don't appear because of laziness. So I wonder if we do it up here, this might not appear. And actually searching through here, oh, we can search through there. This is the wrong one. Yeah, I'm a bit rusty here. Nix-instantiate configuration. Can we see it? I'm going to search with my terminal. No, it's not there. So that is a bit unfortunate. So the error traces are currently really not that great, but I do want to highlight that there are improvements being made. So some Nix versions back, the order of these have been inverted, and so now actually the most relevant one is at the bottom. Yeah, so here destruct properties. This is values null. Yeah, this is the right one. But we can also see in here that there's no mention of like where the error actually happens. It just shows you the function location. So I don't know an immediate improvement for that. But there have been some issues and some, actually there's a PR by Robert. Maybe we could try that one out. That would be interesting. And kind of give a concrete review of it. So traces, stack trace improvements, this one. Yeah, so maybe let's try this. So this has language test improvements. We have mark the start of an infinite recursion. This is a kind of nice improvement that I've been shown before. Let's try out this PR. Also kind of gives you an overview of how you can check out some Nix changes. So I'm in the Nix checkout here. I'm going to stash my existing changes. I'm going to use the GitHub CLI now to check out the PR. So just give the number or the URL. We can check it out. Now we could do a Nix build. Well, I guess let's use a Nix build like this. Will take some time, but let's leave this running in the background then. Yes. Meanwhile, well, let's try out some other things. So actually, recently there is a pull request that I've wanted to check out for the module system, which adds better errors to the module system with more specific locations. Yeah, this is slow. This is a bit too slow indeed. I hope we don't get a unicorn from GitHub. Oh, and am I still here? I think I am still here. Things are breaking down. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can still hear you.
All right. Yeah, I can hear you. But this, a lot of things are a bit slow right now. Well, actually, the browser only. Oh, I guess. Okay, I guess we can't build Nix on the stream, so because that will freeze my processor. But I notice here my processor is still going. Let's see. Sometimes Nix doesn't properly quit. Nix daemon, actually. Nix. Can we find it out like this? Nix daemon. I think it's done now. Yeah. So it's a bit. I'm noticing it's a bit hard to demonstrate these things. Maybe. Maybe let's go back to the module system and just kind of do some overview of the module system, show some things you can do. That's something I can easily talk about. So let's do this a bit more. And maybe we'll run into an infinite. Oh, yeah, actually, there's a good infinite recursion error that I want to show. All right, so option we have one with types.raw. All right, this doesn't work. Let's remove this. All right, now let's use make merge, and let's say make merge is useful. So let's say we have foo, and that might be a lib.types.addErrorContext. All right, and let's also say we have another one. Let's make the type a bit more specific. Let's make this an integer. So we have an attribute set of integers. So this is ints, and this is a strings. Sure. String, and actually not string. String is deprecated. Unfortunately, it doesn't throw a warning when you have it like this. Let me just briefly demonstrate this. Config.strings, this should be fine. So we're going to do a here, this one. Foo not found, that is right, so strict-a config.strings. Yes. Oh, actually strings is used but not defined. Let's define a value. All right. Yeah, so now we get the deprecation warning. Type string is deprecated. Now we can see this issue here. This is my issue where I deprecated strings. Unfortunately, it doesn't trigger for cases like these, address off. Not in older Nix packages, but actually this changed recently, so I need to really make sure that I get rid of these channels finally. So let's just do this for now. I'm gonna do a set nix path to nix packages equals, and I'm actually gonna cheat a bit and use channel nix packages unstable. It's kind of a interesting way to provide nix packages, and I believe this should work. So if we do now nix-instantiate find file nix packages, yeah, it should fetch this from channel. Why was this so fast? Actually, this is a bit surprising to me. Let's see. We can also do this on the command line actually. So for example, we can do nix build channel nix packages unstable. Yeah, and then hello, for example. Yeah, but this seems to be working fine. Let's just make sure that the path is the same. I'm going to evaluate -a path, and that is indeed so. Packages.path in nix packages points to the path of that nix packages. So yeah, that seems to be working fine. So we have that now. And if I do this, all right, the option type is mismatching now. So let's do x equals this. And yeah, that's actually not what I expected. I expected it to throw a warning. Well, in any case, a string is deprecated because it kind of silently concatenates strings. And let me just demonstrate this here. Actually, let me demonstrate it, and then it doesn't work, and then I'll show you why it doesn't work. So let's say strings equals, let's define x.bar here like this, and see what happens. It's actually, oh, x overrides this completely, even though we have two definitions that should get merged here. And that's because the default here is a default set with a lower priority. So you can imagine this being the same as in the module somewhere. It would be the same as config.strings equals lib.makeOption default for this value. So this is the same thing. And yeah, this completely overrides it. One way to get around this, let me move this up here. This sets the value with a lower priority. Yeah, so if we want to, okay, but priorities of the same priorities get merged together. So we can kind of work around this by doing lib.makeOption default here as well. Actually down here, lib.makeOption default. And now if you do this, it still doesn't work. Oh, we don't have a default here. Like this. Okay, now we can, now it works. We have the same priority, 2 times make option default. And now we can see the kind of bad behavior of types.string because it does concatenate these values when you probably didn't expect this. So string is deprecated in favor of just str. str doesn't do that, and it will instead complain that you have conflicting values. So types in the module system are not just types in like conventional programming languages, but they also specify the merging behavior of these values. And so there's different types that also accept strings, but that have different merging behavior. Another one that's interesting is lines. lines merges things together by concatenating with new lines. And you can really do anything with these types. Maybe we should try finding one ourselves a bit later. But so something else I want to show is here. Previously or earlier I was just about to write it like this. But what should happen in this case? And so this is actually, let me walk you through this, and then I can hopefully run it and confirm it. Well, let's try that first. That doesn't change anything, and that is as I expect. So these make option default. Well, make option default is a bad example. We shouldn't use this, just for demonstration purposes. These get pushed down into the attributes. So this really turns into this first, like this, and then this in turn turns into lib.makeOptionDefault here. So it kind of pushes these down to the very kind of edge nodes. And this is actually the code we saw earlier. So in an earlier error message, I'm not sure if it was here. Structure properties, not quite, but it's in there in the module system somewhere. Turns into this. Okay, and similar for the value up here. So while it sets this kind of top value with a make option default, this gets propagated down as well, or at least I'm pretty sure it does. Might be some small details in there that I'm missing. But so let's get away from make option default because this is not really something you should generally use. Instead, if you want to, well, options have a default, so that's the default, all right. But if users specify the options, they might just do it like this. So set config, and then the default gets overridden. If you want to make sure that you set a default, but the user, like if user specifies it, it shouldn't get overridden, you should not set it in here, because this uses make option default on the entire thing. Instead, you can do it in the config section down here. So we might say the config is, oh, actually, yeah, I made a mistake, but yeah, so you could say here, so the default, we want to set foo as a default, and we could set it like this. No, that's, I was missing something. So let's go back briefly. Config strings, let's do it like this. Strings. All right, let's simplify this a bit. Let's remove this again. It's in the stream after all. So I want to set something in here, and let's say just y should be bar. Okay. And so this is maybe something you might expect to work. Let's also change this back to just string. All right. Let's try this, but right, it overrides the entire thing. It's actually, I think what I said earlier wasn't entirely true. This does have a make option default at the top here. And so this here has default priority. And so already at this level, it discards the entire attribute from the default because this entire thing has a lower priority. And so we can't, so this is implicit here. We can't really change this. And we cannot do it here, this as well. Like this would just, oh yeah, this, oh yeah, this is, this doesn't work. Still just overrides the entire thing. And so the only way to do it is to not use the default in here. And so instead, so let's say this is the modules one, the module default. So we can set x equals lib.makeDefault here. So this is by default a foo. I guess we don't need to make default here. Let's do it without this for now. And so this way, if the user, let's say the user provides this as an additional module, config.strings. All right. And yeah, I mean, this obviously works now because there's no difference between this one and this one. But then there is a use case for things like make default, where you might want to say, okay, this is a default. The user can override this. Well, if we don't provide this, we've seen this earlier. If we provide this again, it will give a conflict. But if we do a make default here, it's kind of, again, a proper default that can get overridden. So this is generally what you want to do for defaults in modules with things like nested configuration. All right, maybe I'm going to stop here for a second. Is there anyone that has a question about the things I just talked about, or some other questions they might want to ask? We can switch the topic midway. All right, if there's no questions, that's fine too. Let's feel free to use the chat as well. But yeah, otherwise I'm just gonna continue a bit with the module system. So maybe let's cover a kind of what you might want to do in like the NixOS module for settings like these. This is a very common pattern for settings. I'm gonna go through a kind of standard way to set that up. So for this, maybe let's I guess we can use this, but this gets a bit unhandy with the indentation here. So instead of doing this, I'm going to move this to a separate file. And so now we can benefit from lib being in here. So we can just copy this, move it into module.nix, paste it, fix the indentation, and then go back to the default one, and we can just do module.nix here. All right, so now let's do something like this. So let's say you have a, let's actually go, I'm gonna start fresh here. So generally in NixOS, let's simulate NixOS, we have environment.etc. Let's have an etc option, which kind of simulates this. So make option, and we want to specify which files are in here. So the type should be something like lib.types.addErrorContext, lib.types. Let's say path. So this is we can also add a description, kind of a good pattern to follow. Kind of specifies which files are in etc. Or which paths are in etc. All right. So also there's no default here. So if we were to evaluate this config.etc, we would get an error that the option is used but not defined. Arguably, there should be kind of a default for addResOff, which is just an empty attribute set. This doesn't exist right now, but we can just add it for now. All right, and so now let's define something in here. Let's say config.etc, and so now let's say foo should be some file, and I do want to have access to packages here. We could add it up here, but this doesn't currently work. So if we try this, well, actually it does work because we don't access it. Let's access it. Packages dot, let's do a write text one. Foo. All right. And here I'm just going to do kind of foo configuration. All right. Right, now we get packages missing. So packages is something NixOS specifically adds to the module system evaluation. But in this case, we just use the eval modules itself. We don't have anything from NixOS in here. Yeah, so how we can do this otherwise? So one important thing to remember is that we do not need to have an argument up here. So we want to have access to packages somehow, but if we were to kind of redesign it nowadays, we might go for something like an option instead. Where we say, actually let's do it without an option first and say config.module.args dot packages equals, and now we can have our packages here. I'm gonna do this because it's simple. It's also said make sure it's somewhat pure, not entirely, but prevent some impurities. All right, now this should work. So we declare the argument up there, and this is not great. We get kind of an infinite evaluation, and this comes from the fact that strict here evaluates the I guess etc, and then it goes into the address of, and then again it goes into the path here, which is this one here, and derivations are attribute sets and kind of recursive in themselves. So like if we go check this out, hello.out.out.out, that exists, and so it kind of recurses into the entire thing and tries to evaluate it strictly. But yeah, that of course doesn't work. So instead, to evaluate this, we should switch from kind of this nix-instantiate eval strict thingy, which is only based on evaluation, to at least nix-instantiate, which is based on derivations. But so far, we don't really have a derivation here. Well, it works in this case because nix-instantiate kind of recurses into derivations once and builds those. But that actually, so this will break if I do this, just to demonstrate this. If we have a nested address of, then say foo.bar. Now it doesn't build anything. It's just because if we were to nix-repl this, and say config.etc, so this is an attribute set, has foo in it, but foo is also an attribute set, but it's not a derivation itself. So nix-instantiate does this one level of recursion into here, and it would have built this foo value if it was a derivation, but that's not the case. We do have some questions in the chat, by the way. I'm going to try to get to those in a bit. And so what we need to do here is to combine these potentially many etc values here. So we might have foo, we might have bar, that's NixOS system with a various configuration, and we need to have a single one that combines all of them into kind of an etc environment where it's kind of correctly linked. And so for this, you want to have another option. So we have etc, that's kind of our values. We can then also say, let's say etc combined. We declare an option for this. I'm just going to say this is a lib.types.package. All right. We could set the value here with a default. Generally, you wouldn't have to override this. So I'm going to use packages dot that would be built-env symlink join. That might be a bit. Symlink join might work. Or actually, let's look at the documentation. If it exists, like packages manual. I'm going to want to look at symlink join. We have symlink join here that just has these paths. That's not what I'm looking for. What is the other builder there called? Packages, build support, trivial builders, default, symlink join. The symlink join does this. It just takes a set of paths and puts them together. Oh, link farm, that's the one I was searching for. So link farm, we can see the docs here. You can provide a name and a path, and it creates a kind of directory where each of these names get linked to the respective path you passed. So I want to make use of this here. So this is a link farm. How to use this? It's just a name. Okay, name etc, and then we have all of the values. So here we need a map address to list. and then we take the name and the value, and so this needs name and path. All right. Create an attribute set. Name is the name itself, and the path is the value. All right, and then we link this over the config.etc option. All right, but now we need to add config up here. All right, now etc combined, and let's try this out. etc combined, and we have a mistake here. All right, etc combined does instantiate. Let's also try to build it and just see that we have the result we expect. And ls result. And well, let's do it like this. And yeah, we can see the result is actually correct. Bar foo links to the separate foo and bar derivations here. Let's pause this for now. I'm gonna take a look at some questions in the channel. So one of them is, how can one create a derivation with pasthru.tests outside of Nix packages and then run tests available to your package set? Yeah, that's a good question. Let's do this. So what's it? Pasthru.tests. So right, let's say you're in some derivation. Let's do import of Nix packages. Okay, I'll say we build some package. Let's use run command as an example. Test, gonna do this. All right, and I'm gonna just touch out. That should be fine. And now in here we can pass the pass through. So this is the same attribute you might also have in make derivation. So we want to declare tests here. Now so tests can be anything really. You can also do, so generally you give it a name. So for example, tests dot, simple. And it should be a derivation though. So in here we might do, actually this is a bit, yeah, actually, so now we need to refer to the package itself. We can do this using a let binding though. So let's say package equals this. Oh, package equals this, and now in here we want to test it and kind of say, well, let's say we write foo to the result, and in here we do another run command. Can we get some nesting? This is the test, or let's call this foo. And this is the foo test. All right, and in here we just check that cat, or let's say, yeah, sure, cat of the package is equal to, so let's do if this string is not equals foo, then kind of exit one, echo result is not foo. All right, and now let's do package here so we can build it right away. Okay, so the package builds, but we haven't run the test yet. For that you need pasthru. So -a pasthru.tests. All right, and that failed to produce output path. That's fair. We need to also do this. All right, so that works. This is a very simple one. Let's use some nicer kind of test things. Oh, and actually we're at the right location right here. We have test version. Actually, that would be a nice one to test out. There's some examples here. That's nice. So testers.test version, and we give a package. All right, and maybe let's try something like this. Yeah. So so this is one test, but let's also have another one. Let's copy this down here. Let's say tests.version, and now packages.testers.test version. And we're going to, what kind of attributes are there? Package and version. So the package is this very package, same variable name even. And the version is, let's test 1.2. All right, now this should obviously fail. We don't even have a, right, we don't even have a anything you can run. Foo command not found. Oh yeah, okay, apparently it runs the thing as a script itself. Okay, so let's add a script here. Let's do it using, so let's say script is here. And we're going to, yeah, let's write it like this. There is things like packages.write shell or shell application, which I would recommend. Otherwise, I'm going to keep it very simple for now. I mean, this is even impure, so don't do this. Do packages.runtime shell, I believe. Kind of makes this a bit nicer. And so in here, we're just going to say echo. I'm not sure exactly how that should work. It's okay, we have the script as a variable, and now we need to actually install it into the output. I'm going to use pass as files. I'm going to say that script environment variable should be passed as a file instead. Now we can do cp of script path. That's how pass as files works. It sets the path where the script is available under the path kind of suffix, and install it into out. And now let's run this again, see what happens. Cannot stat this here. That's a bit concerning. Let's see what's going on here. Let's build. So building this one, let's see what happens in the build here. I'm going to use show derivation to get like an insight into like what is actually happening. It shouldn't like, not too many things should be going on. But yeah, we have the script here. Actually, this is not super helpful. We could use JQ to kind of dig into this a bit more. A useful one is getting the environment with this one here. Then we can also do SDN. We have builder. We have build command, which we could get. Oh, yeah, this is interesting. And we could use -r to get the raw one without the escaping. Okay. Script path is empty. That, oh yeah, that could be the case. Yeah, maybe I kind of pass as file. Is it pass as files? Let's look at the Nix manual for this. Pass as, oh, it's pass as file, not files. Okay. So unfortunately, make derivation doesn't have any like checking for these kinds of things. So what it did is assign the pass as files environment variable, notably without any like escaping of spaces here, which can cause some problems. But yeah, so pasthru.tests. Wait, that's still, oh yeah, should change it. Alright, foo version returned a non-zero exit code. Why did it return a non-zero one? Foo command not found. That is it this one? Oh, it might be that. Oh yeah, it probably tries to run this as a binary. Let's install it into out bin, and then foo. Maybe that works better. Okay, permission denied. Oh, okay, that's a good sign. We just need to chmod bin foo. All right. right, result is not true. Now the first test fails, but that's as expected. So let's actually comment this one out. I don't want to fix it. All right, so the tests pass, and we were able to make use of a tester. But there's also other things. In particular, you can also use NixOS tests in here. Is this explained in here? Oh yeah, here, run NixOS test. Run NixOS test. This is interesting. Why are there two here? Package makes the Nix package options read only. Okay, this would probably be good to read. Good to know that this is documented this nicely here. Okay, I hope that answers the question. Let me just reread it. Run test available to the package set. Yeah, it should work. Another question is, I'm trying to set up the version, or to update the version in dbeaver to a version using flakes. I'm getting a Maven error dealing with plugins.org something. How to get around a dependency issue like this? I don't think we can take a close look at this in the remaining time, which is like 5 minutes, or just kind of hard these issues. But what I would recommend is, like, when you are in Nix packages, so let's say dbeaver, you said, beaver here, to look at the commit log to find people that have previously updated it. Well, not the 3 white cleanups here, but so dbeaver cleanup, this person, for example, you can open issues to kind of request help with these things. Yeah, and otherwise, if you're running into an issue, try to describe it as well as possible. You can file it in the Nix packages issue tracker, and yeah, ping some relevant people. I'm going to go to the next question and read that. So, also running NixOS module tests similarly to NixOS/tests could be interesting if there's time. Yeah, right, that was mentioned. Maybe let's, we have just a couple more minutes. But actually, before that, I wanted to show the escaping issue I mentioned earlier. So let's do like a simple escaping issue.nix. Say I really need to set this up a bit better. Import Nix packages. All right, now packages run command again. We're going to do foo. And here we're just gonna say env, I guess. So this should show the environment variables. Nix build. Let's build up this file. All right, so yeah, we can see all the environment variables now. But this is a bit too verbose. So yeah, let's just print the single ones when we see them. So we earlier had something like this, where we had an environment variable, echo foo. Can env print these things a bit better? Probably. No. Okay, let's just echo foo is actually declare -p foo. That's a bash thing, but it might work. Yeah, that works. All right. So foo is declared as foo. Okay, that is as actually no, this is not entirely as expected. So it's declared as -x, which I believe is a normal variable. It's not declared as an array, and so this also means that the kind of escaping in here doesn't work. So I mean, we might have multiple elements, but these are just concatenated into a concatenated string with a space in between. But so if we have foo bar and then baz inside of here, so we have only 2 elements, this then doesn't work as expected. You get all 3 in one. And so this can cause problems when you want things like option foo. Actually, option, yes, something with like command line options could be problematic. All right, if you have an option that you want like option equals foo bar, like if you want to provide the option as a string, this would then not properly work. But so a workaround for this is to do, so this doesn't work. Let's copy this to bar. So there's this useful function pkgs.lib.escapeShellArgs, which takes a list and turns it into kind of string that bash can kind of interpret correctly. So let's see what bar is declared here. Do this. So we can see bar is this kind of thing. It has these quotes around. And so this in itself is still only a variable. There's nothing special going on in make derivation. But what you can do is you can say foo list equals, I hope I get this right. Actually, I think it's eval foo list equals, and then foo, I believe, oh, actually no, it's bar that we want here. Bar list. Okay, and then we do declare -p bar, so we just print what it is. And that still didn't work correctly. Something like this should work. I've used this before. Declare p bar. Oh, is it? It might be declare -a bar like this. Oh, let me notice an X here. And that, no, that doesn't work. Yeah.
You named the variable bar list, not bar.
Oh, thank you. That's probably it. Yes, thank you. All right, so yeah, now we have a list of the proper arguments, and we can also do like anything in here. We can use like quotes. We can use weird quotes, new lines. We can use probably not null bytes, but Nix can't represent null bytes either. And that should all work correctly. All right, we are out of time. But yeah, thanks for joining and listening, and